2020 was a year unlike any other, not just here in Thunder Bay, but right across the world as a global pandemic changed everything and forced us to adapt to a new normal. While COVID-19 dominated this year's headlines, the past 12 months were nothing short of eventful. Settle in, as over the next hour, we recap the stories of 2020.
There was a lot of time and effort put into this, months and months of work. So when this day came, we were really happy to see it.
Water is basic human right. How come we can't have it?
We've experienced our first loss, a life lost, a good life lost due to COVID-19.
I'm Brittany Ramsay, and thanks for tuning in to TBT News Year in Review. 2020 got off to a devastating start as Thunder Bay's first murder of the year happened on New Year's Day.
Police got a call that an altercation had occurred at the 200 block of West Victoria Avenue. Detective Inspector John Fennell describes what took place next.
As a result, going there, officers discovered that it was a scene where a child was injured and transported to the hospital, where unfortunately succumbed to his injuries.
The boy was just 11 years old and his mother is being charged in his death. 34-year-old Courtney Marie LaBelle of Thunder Bay is charged with second-degree murder and aggravated assault. The aggravated assault is stemming from a second victim, a 59-year-old man who was a relative but not the boy's father. He also suffered injuries in the altercation and was transported to hospital but was released later on New Year's Day.
Just 8 days later, Thunder Bay had its second homicide of 2020.
Austin Robinson was the victim of the serious assault that took place January 9th. Police have confirmed the teen succumbed to his injuries sustained at his home on Syndicate Avenue North and are now investigating the incident as a homicide. 19-year-old Cody Eacham and a 14-year-old male suspect involved in the assault remain in custody, and police expect to lay new charges as a result of the victim's passing. Police have yet to say if there is a known motive to the crime, but it was not random.
Both suspects were later charged with first-degree murder. Ongoing job action and rotating strikes for all four of Ontario's teachers' unions continued in January as their battle with the province and Education Minister Stephen Lecce heightened.
More than 500 elementary school teachers at 6 locations in Thunder Bay spent Thursday on the picket lines. It's the first time members of ETFO have taken part in a full-day strike here in the Lakehead District. Local Federation President Mike Judge explains what teachers are asking for.
Big concern is that they're not at the table, but specifically, we're looking to address our full-day kindergarten model and protect that, guarantee that that's going to continue beyond this year. We're looking to establish better supports for our students with special needs. And finally, we really need to do something to address the violence in our schools.
If you take the cuts you've made to the number of teachers that are in our classroom, and if you take off the cuts that you've made to the support staff, if you just go back to last year's levels, we will suspend the strikes indefinitely. We can get back to the bargaining table in Toronto, and we can hammer out a deal in very short order. But this government, despite what they're telling the public, is committed to moving forward with those cuts. And as long as those cuts are on the table, there is not going to be a pathway to a resolution.
At the end of January, a release from the City of Thunder Bay confirmed it had stopped adding sodium hydroxide to the local drinking water system due to reports of leaking pipes.
We received some customer concerns saying that they had pinhole leaks, and pinhole leaks are, common in plumbing, but we've never received those type of reports before. So we are further reviewing this, and at this time we're going to make the pH adjustment to go back to what we were 2 years ago.
February saw several more strikes and increased job action from the teachers' unions, but all four did eventually reach tentative agreements with the provincial government in the spring. Meanwhile, Ontario Northland's intercommunity bus service expanded to Thunder Bay, and more routes throughout northwestern Ontario were announced over the coming months, including Thunder Bay to Winnipeg.
I called on ONTC a little over a year and a half ago to start taking a look at the prospect for expansion into northwestern Ontario. I firmly believe that this was a taxpayer-funded bus service, and that if it was going to be called Ontario Northland, it should serve Ontario North.
On February 20th, the verdict of the extortion trial of former Thunder Bay Mayor Keith Hobbs, his wife Marissa, and friend Mary Voss was announced. The three were found not guilty.
For 3 hours, they listened to Justice Fletcher Dawson read about 60 pages of his 155-page decision, in which he called the alleged victim a thoroughly unreliable witness who was abusive to others and would make extortion allegations, quote, at the drop of a hat. He also rejected evidence presented by 2 other key Crown witnesses. And while Dawson believes Keith Hobbs, who was the only accused to take the stand, at times stretched the truth in order to portray himself in a better light, the judge determined the Crown failed to prove the guilt of any of the accused beyond a reasonable doubt.
8 months later, in October, the Hobbs filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against several defendants, including the Thunder Bay Police Services Board, the Attorney General of Canada, and 13 individuals. Court documents allege they were accused of false arrest, malicious prosecution, and defamation, but is yet to be proven in court. February 25th saw a scary incident for some local sports figures.
The incident occurred just after 4 o'clock local time Monday at the Dryden Airport. Officials from Bearskin Airlines would not return our calls requesting comment, but according to OPP and the City of Dryden, the small plane carrying 6 passengers and 2 crew members was picking up speed preparing to take off when it lost control and left the runway. Thunder Bay's Krista McCarville was on the flight and describes what she witnessed from inside the plane.
Next thing I knew, I just looked and we were taking a sharp turn on the runway, and I could tell we were heading towards the snowbank. So my immediate reaction was basically just to try to brace myself for, hitting the snowbank.
Among the other passengers were McCarville's curling teammate Ashley Sipola and their coach Rick Lang. They were on their way back to Thunder Bay after a 4th place finish at the Scotties Tournament of Hearts in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. McCarville says everyone on the plane was in shock and very shaken up, and Lang took the worst of it.
The propeller hit the snowbank and shattered, which came inside the plane, and he had multiple shattered propeller pieces in his hand, and so he did go to the emergency just to get that removed.
The end of February brought thousands to the city as Thunder Bay hosted the Special Olympics Canada Winter Games.
Over 1,000 athletes, trainers, and coaches from across Canada made their way into the Fort William Gardens on Tuesday night to celebrate the commencement of the 2020 Special Olympics in Thunder Bay. Hundreds of athletes proudly made their way into the center of the room with their colleagues and peers as their provinces were announced and were applauded by the full crowd in attendance.
There was a lot of time and effort put into this, months and months of work. So when this day came, we were really happy to see it. And the real thing that we noticed was the excitement level of the athletes who just want to get started and compete and get out there and have some fun.
March was an unprecedented month as the COVID-19 pandemic became a reality and forced Ontario Premier Doug Ford to issue a state of emergency. With that came the closure of all non-essential businesses and services, as well as schools, and all large gatherings or events were prohibited. Locally, both Lakehead University and Confederation College shifted to online learning models. Several city parks and numerous facilities ceased operation, which resulted in mass layoffs of nearly 800 city employees. The closures left local business owners with growing uncertainty.
Jim Camuzzi owns Rooster's Bistro. He's also the chair of the Waterfront District BIA. His restaurant is completely closed for now. And while he understands the province's decision, he doesn't know how long he can stay afloat because he doesn't know what upper levels of government will announce next.
We've made plans, and it seems every morning I wake up and those plans are altered by one form of the government or the health officials.
Just a few blocks away, the popular Sweet North Bakery is open for takeout, offering all regular menu items and bake-at-home options. But owner Aaron De Lorenzi's customers are fewer and farther between than usual.
We have a busy lunch and a full dining room, and look around, it's empty. We don't know what this means. I know that Thunder Bay has always been very supportive of local business, and I know that's not going to change.
The first known case of COVID-19 in Thunder Bay was announced on March 27th by the District Health Unit.
This was not a surprise to me, and it was not unexpected, and we are prepared to manage this kind of situation.
Officials from the District Health Unit announced that a man in his 60s who spent a week in Florida had tested positive for the virus, and his wife is likely to have it too. But so far, that case is isolated, and the health unit is investigating further.
Due to the travel history, this case does not represent community spread.
There were 2 more murders in March as well, the city's 3rd and 4th homicides of the year. 20-year-old Brianna Nedamagisic and a 15-year-old youth were charged with second-degree murder in the death of Ray Tawagishig at a Picton Avenue residence. And 2 19-year-olds, Trayvon Stewart and Terrell Williams, were charged with first-degree murder in the death of Adrian Drysdale at a North May Street address. After the break, Thunder Bay sees its first COVID-19 related death as TBT News Year in Review continues. Welcome back to TBT News Year in Review. In April, the COVID-19 pandemic worsened in Thunder Bay. There was a significant rise in cases and testing demands, and in anticipation of increased hospitalizations, the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center opened up a special COVID-19 unit.
The Health Sciences Center's dedicated COVID-19 unit is officially operational. Unit 3A, which previously served as the hospital's surgical unit, is now a hot zone for COVID-19 patients.
Overall, the hospital is only at about 60% capacity. That's why Dr. Kennedy remains confident that the facility won't be overwhelmed by COVID-19. He doesn't believe that we'll see the surge in cases that caused so many problems, for example, in Italy or in New York City, as long as residents here stay vigilant, stay home, and observe proper physical distancing.
The Lac des Îles mine, just north of Thunder Bay, was the site of the first major COVID-19 outbreak in the area. The mine was shut down for 3 weeks as over 20 employees tested positive for the virus. The outbreak also led to Thunder Bay's first COVID-19 related death, a man in his 50s who had underlying health conditions.
We've experienced our first loss, a life lost, a good life lost due to COVID-19. Sometimes this COVID-19 is just overwhelming from a disease perspective. It just takes over the body, takes over the vital signs, the organs, and there's only so much our medical staff, our nursing staff can do to keep this virus from the ultimate course of death.
On April 23rd, Thunder Bay Mayor Bill Morrow declared a local state of emergency, primarily for the purpose of redeploying municipal staff into essential roles. Meanwhile, the Fort William First Nation imposed and later extended a nightly curfew and security checks to halt all non-members or non-essential workers from entering the reserve. All non-essential businesses were also forced to close.
Chief Peter Collins says it was a lengthy and at times heated discussion among their council Wednesday night. Following advice from health professionals, retail businesses on the reserve have been told to remain closed and checkpoints will remain in place. Collins says the community and vendors have been supportive of their decision. He understands the toll the curfew has had on his residents' way of life.
Our curfew is that if you don't have permission to come onto Fort William First Nation land, you're not entitled to come onto our land. Simple as that. And we'll deal with it as we go forward. I mean, I don't want to get into any heated debates with our vendors. I strongly support our vendors, but at the same time, we have a job to do, and that's protection and the health and well-being of our community members.
The city's 5th homicide of the year occurred at the end of April. A body was found in the wooded area off East Lyon Boulevard shortly after police issued a missing persons alert for a teenage girl.
2 days after her body was found, and 1 day after police announced it was a homicide, Detective Inspector John Fennell confirmed the identity of the young victim.
Today, after liaisoning with the family, we're acknowledging that it's Kaylee Ivel, 14 years of age, from the Thunder Bay area.
A few days later, Thunder Bay police confirmed they arrested and charged a 14-year-old girl who could not be identified and 21-year-old Jarrett Brandon Sinawap, both with first-degree murder. Moving into May, where Thunder Bay residents were treated to a unique air show. Operation Inspiration saw the Royal Canadian Air Force snowbirds fly overhead as part of a special cross-country tour.
This isn't a typical air show for the snowbirds, who are used to flying across Canada, wowing crowds with their amazing aerial maneuvers. It's a bit of a way to give back to the tens and thousands and millions of frontline workers, whether they're healthcare or grocery store or whatever it is, and show them that they care.
It is different, and it's a very different job that we're doing now. We've got less interaction with the public than we normally do at an air show. But Up Inspiration isn't about air shows, and it's not even about the airplanes so much as it is about raising Canadian spirits. And if we can do that for them, then give them a little glimmer of hope that things are going to get better in the next few weeks or months, then we're doing our job.
After nearly 2 months of shutdowns, Ontario entered stage 1 of its reopening plan, which included storefront retailers, many recreational activities, and some healthcare services. The Fort William First Nation lifted its lockdown as well, but on May 19th, the province announced all schools would remain closed for the rest of the academic year. Meanwhile, after facing financial troubles, the Finlandia Association voted to liquidate the historic 110-year-old Finnish labor temple and the famous Hoito restaurant.
A vast majority of Finlandia members voted in favor of liquidation, a move dubbed the lesser of two evils, opposed to bankruptcy as they face a mountain of debt. The Finlandia Association owes $480,000 to the Hoito, around $290,000 to the Royal Bank, $160,000 to Thunder Bay Ventures, and $33,000 to the city for taxes. Along with other debts, it totals more than $1 million, and the Hoito itself has a $300,000 debt.
The end of May saw another murder, Thunder Bay's 6th of the year.
There's definitely drug overtone to this investigation.
Detective Inspector John Fennell made it clear what the nature of the situation was that ended with 29-year-old Paul Vivier of Victoria, BC, being pronounced dead at the Thunder Bay Regional Hospital. Police have charged 36-year-old Dennis Terry Bernard with second-degree murder and say there is a possibility more charges could follow. The crime was committed at the Midtown Inn on Saturday, May 30th. Vivier was still alive when officers arrived at the scene, but he passed away a short time later.
2 other suspects were also charged with second-degree murder in Vivier's death, 19-year-old Sandy Clark Noel and a 16-year-old male. When we come back, a global movement makes its mark on Thunder Bay. Stay with us. Welcome back to TBT News Year in Review. In the spring, Black Lives Matter became a global movement for racial justice, sparked by the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. In June, some local youth organized a rally which got an outpouring of support.
No racist police! No justice, no peace!
A huge crowd gathered around Thunder Bay's Waverly Park together with one goal: to take a stand against racism.
Honestly, it's a really good thing to see all the diversity here, because it shows it's not just one community that wants to see change, it's like the whole world wants to see change.
That diversity came from people of all ages and races, with a strong presence from the Indigenous community.
Mamaway, we're in this all together, and we can't forget that word.
After probably millions of black and innocent deaths, people have started to finally realize that there's an issue, and this issue needs to be addressed, and this issue needs to be fixed.
And with that hope for a better tomorrow, the black community showed their appreciation for those willing to stand up.
By showing up to this protest, thank you!
Thunder Bay was included in the Ford government's regional approach to reopening Ontario and was allowed to move into stage 2.
Starting on Friday, the hard-hit restaurant industry will get a big boost when they're finally allowed to begin seating customers on outdoor patios.
We're really excited as a restaurant owner and as a community down here in the waterfront. We're all looking for that spark that's going to drive some traffic down to our waterfront district.
Mayor Bill Morrow put the motion forward last month, looking for ways to expand on the patio pilot project that's been in place over the last couple of summers. And while council won't have a decision by Friday, Morrow feels they can implement measures with minimal delay.
There is a program in place that was a pilot program, so we can take the bones of that program and just build upon it.
Intercity Shopping Centre has also finally been given the green light to open its doors on Friday.
Though it remains to be seen how many businesses inside will be ready to go right away and how many others will need a little more time to implement the necessary safety protocols. Common areas of the mall already feature stickers on the floor identifying directional foot traffic and signs to promote physical distancing.
City Council received the program and service review from a consultant, and its 45 recommendations were met with mixed reaction.
Many residents are up in arms about recommendations in the program and service review that call for the city to close or sell the conservatory, Port Arthur Stadium, city-owned golf courses, and more. So it's no surprise that the consultants with Grant Thornton who prepared the report faced questions from council about why those recommendations were made, as opposed to identifying ways to generate more revenue. But the bulk of the recommendations, and those which are most easily acted upon, deal with ways to improve efficiency in city departments. The Chamber of Commerce has been calling for a review like this one for years.
I think there's lots of opportunities for savings over the long term and really making the city processes much more efficient, and we're very pleased with that, and we'll be continuing to be engaged in whatever the implementation plan is.
Council has since decided to invest in upgrading the conservatory and not to close either of the 2 municipal golf courses or Boulevard Lake Beach. The city's 7th homicide of 2020 happened on June 19th at a Dawson Street apartment. The victim was 47-year-old Lydia Rose Jacob. 21-year-old Lorena Jacob was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. In July, as the Ontario government stuck with its regional approach to reopening the province, Thunder Bay was given the green light to move to Stage 3.
Bob Stewart is the co-owner of Caribou and the Keg restaurants, and he says the Stage 3 announcement is just the news he's been waiting for. Both his restaurants will be ready for dinner service on Friday on a reservation basis only. He explains some new protocols that will be in place.
Our staff, front house and back house, are going to be wearing masks when they serve. Our service styles are going to change a little bit so that they're not going into the table as much as they used to. So it's going to be, I think, a little bit safer for the staff, but that's always a concern. But as long as we follow the procedures, I think we'll be okay.
Fitness centers also have the go-ahead for a Friday opening, and at Push, owner Jen Bizignano is excited to provide people a place to once again work on their physical and mental health.
July 20th was a major milestone in Thunder Bay's fight against COVID-19, as there were 0 known active cases in the area. And in an effort to keep the case numbers down, the district health unit imposed a mandatory mask mandate on July 24th.
It was difficult to find anyone not wearing a mask before entering a store on Friday. It appears that the health unit's new regulation is being accepted by the general public, and Mayor Bill Morrow says he's not surprised.
I know some people are still struggling with it a little bit, but I think by and large it will be well respected and accommodated from the community's perspective. Concern expressed about us having no cases and very low numbers, but other jurisdictions in similar situations to Thunder Bay have made this decision as well. And so this is about what's going to happen in the fall and beyond, and being proactive. So I think we're in a good place, and we're trying to stay in a good place.
Both the health unit and the city aren't taking any strict actions to enforce the new order, aside from some signage distributed to local businesses.
It's going to take a while for us to all adjust the way we perform our daily lives. Just need to be kind and patient with each other as we adjust to the new realities.
I think it's fair to say that most people are going to be okay with this, but there are some that are not. And hopefully over time, if it's 1 week, 1 month, 4 months, we begin to see less of the resistance to the policy, and we just try and remind people to be respectful of other people in the community who may be immunocompromised, who may be living with cancer, who might be a diabetic, who might be a senior that's very concerned. That's what this is also about. It's not just about you, it's about your ability to impact someone else.
City Council received some good news in July regarding Thunder Bay's financial deficit due to COVID-19.
Thunder Bay's second quarter budget variance report was summed up quite succinctly by Councillor Mark Bentz.
This is the best bad news we've ever been delivered.
That's because the expected year-end financial impact of COVID-19 is now $7 million. That's a drop of more than $5 million from the previous estimate back in May, due largely to cost-saving measures associated with closing city facilities and laying off staff during the early months of the pandemic. Transit revenue is also going back up after reintroducing the $3 bus fare. The numbers will change. This report doesn't factor in support for municipalities that was announced by the province on Monday, and it also assumes that city facilities that are currently closed will stay that way for the rest of the year.
In August, the much anticipated dollar value of that provincial and federal COVID-19 relief funding was announced by the City of Thunder Bay.
Just south of $9.4 million for the City of Thunder Bay. Obviously an incredibly significant day.
That funding has been broken up into two streams. Nearly $6.2 million can be spent however the city sees fit in order to offset COVID-19 costs. If there's money left over at the end of the year, it's to be placed into reserves to alleviate 2021 COVID expenses. The remaining $3.18 million must be directed towards city transit to help offset COVID-19 costs incurred from April 1st through the end of September.
This was our most significant pressure on the revenue side on the transit piece. That was representing $400,000 to $500,000 a month.
The latest estimates had projected $3.1 million of lost transit revenue this year due to reduced ridership and passengers being allowed to ride for free during the height of the pandemic scare.
Meanwhile, ongoing controversy regarding a proposed multi-use turf facility to be built at Chapels Park reached new heights in August.
After council dismissed a recommendation earlier this month from City Manager Norm Gale asking to delay the turf facility vote until as late as November of 2021, Councillor Mark Bentz mounted a last-ditch effort to press pause for just 90 days. He says this would allow council time for sober second thought before charging ahead with a facility that could cost $42 million or more.
It allows us to display to the public that we are careful and thoughtful with the money that they entrust with us.
And while the idea of a 3-month delay appeased councillors Peng Yu and Brian McKinnon, who previously voted against the 15-month delay, council still voted down Bentz's motion 7-6 and later ratified its decision to put the project out to tender by that same thin margin. The move sparking some heated words around the council table.
A couple months ago, exceptional times. We're living in exceptional times. What a crock of bull crap that was. Exceptional times, and then we can't even give 90 days to actually assess our financial picture.
We're sitting here at a 7-6 vote on a $42 million expenditure at 2 o'clock in the morning in the summertime. Really, this is not the way to carry out business. There will definitely be the potential for a loss of trust.
While the soccer community and other user groups passionately support the project, the CEDC and the Chamber of Commerce have each expressed major concerns. And online public feedback suggests that most residents feel at the very least that it's not the right time given the expenses associated with COVID-19.
Forest fire season hit the Northwest once again this year. Red Lake 49 started on August 10th, grew more than 500 hectares overnight, and forced many of the 4,100 nearby residents to evacuate.
This is a fire that took hold under high winds and some fairly extreme fire hazard conditions that were present when the fire got its start. Those conditions which pose a real challenge for firefighters and suppression are expected to persist through today as well.
Officials said close to half the population of about 4,100 was believed to have left the community by road as of late Tuesday morning, seeking refuge in other northwestern Ontario communities, including Dryden, where beds were made available at the arena.
We hope this fire becomes controlled. We had some good news from the MNRF last evening that the fire was somewhat contained.
About a week later, evacuees from Red Lake were cleared to return home, but in the meantime, Thunder Bay played host to evacuees from the Emitung First Nation.
The first flight from Edmonton arrived just after 1 in the afternoon, carrying some of the 200 residents slated to stay in Thunder Bay. Smoke from the Nipigon 45 fire reached the community on Monday. Chief Harvey Yesno says they needed to start with those at the highest risk.
Our priority or unconcern was in regards to people that may have chronic or respiratory, disability issues, elderly, those that need constant or regular medical attention.
Including other host cities, a quarter of the community of 1,600 is primed to evacuate, but a worsening of fire conditions could force the remaining community members to leave.
Edmonton evacuees were cleared to return home in just under 3 weeks on August 31st. And on that final day of the month, Thunder Bay Police reported the city's 8th murder of the year.
29-year-old Kenneth Leighton Muñez and 31-year-old Natalie Roseanne Muñez have been charged with the second-degree murder of Christopher David Misatawa-Gisik, whose body was found by a passerby on Sunday morning on the 400 block of Main Street.
At this point in time, we know that all parties are known to each other. It's not believed that the two are immediate family. There may be an extended familial relationship, but all parties involved are known to one another.
When we return, September brings a school year unlike any other as News Year in Review continues. Welcome back to TBT News Year in Review. For youth across the city, September started as usual with going back to school, but the return was actually quite unusual due to COVID-19.
Over at St. Ignatius High School, it was a staggered start for only students in grade 9 and 11. They're getting their first taste of the new COVID protocols and new schedule, with the first half of the day spent in the classroom and the second half at home learning online. Principal Mike Filippetti is just happy to be back.
It's nice to be back for the students. It's been a long haul with them being off. As a principal and as an employee, sure, there's some nerves coming back. We want to make sure that all of our students are safe. We want to make sure that we're safe.
Around 15% of public board students are staying home and learning online, but Keene is hopeful that as time goes on, more and more students will be returning to the classroom.
You know, when that first window opens up and parents will be able to choose whether to return their kids from remote learning to school, I think that if things go well in the community, we'll see more and more parents opting for normalcy. And
just over 2 weeks into the school year, École Grand Morgan was the first local school to report a case of COVID-19.
Certainly, we knew it was likely going to happen at some point, that we would have a case associated with the school. And so we just kicked into gear yesterday when we, to do the follow-up that we would normally do.
The classroom has been isolated, with those classmates currently at home for the next 13 days.
We treat this as a significant situation, absolutely, because we know the implications for the school, for others that may have been exposed in that kind of setting, and we followed through. We dedicated our resources to that yesterday. Children are as safe as they can be, given that there's a global pandemic right now, and we will continue to work with schools. It's a big part of what the work that we're doing right now is to support them, again, in preventing COVID from getting into the school in the first place.
Beloved by many and a facility some passionate residents fought to save, the demolition of Dease Pool got underway in September.
The fight to save Dease Pool has officially been lost. The change room has already been reduced to rubble, and the pool basin isn't far behind. A couple of like-minded residents, still dedicated to ensuring that the property is maintained for free youth recreational activities, continued to rally for public support as workers from M. Hashi & Sons sifted through the debris behind them. The company is carrying out the demolition on behalf of the city for about $59,000.
4 months after liquidation, the finished Labour Temple was sold, and the purchaser from Barrie, Ontario, promised to keep some aspects of the historic building intact.
After months of uncertainty, it appears the Hoydo restaurant has been saved.
The plan is to try and partner up with somebody in the city to open the Hoydo restaurant, right? To give it a facelift inside, maybe revise the menu, improve the food, improve the service, and get the people coming back.
That's Brad McKinnon, the new owner of the finished Labour Temple and the Hoydo restaurant. He's purchased the building for $375,000 and plans on renovating the 102-year-old restaurant and giving it a new feel while keeping its rich history intact. As for the finish hall and the rest of the floors above, major changes are coming.
Well, we don't plan to change anything on the exterior of the building, even though there have been many changes over the years. I'd like to maintain, improve on what's already there. The upstairs, we plan to put high-end apartments and hopefully get this property earning an income once again, but also respecting the history and the traditions that have sort of gone on in that building for the last 110 years.
An ongoing battle between property owners and the city of Thunder Bay over leaky pipes escalated in October. Upset over lack of action and compensation, a group of affected residents organized a rally outside City Hall.
Fix our pipes! Fix our pipes!
That was the message ringing loud and clear outside City Hall. Over 100 disgruntled residents gathered, all who have been affected in some way by the persistent pinhole leak problem facing the city.
And we are a group, we are people, and we want some action. We're paying city taxes, and our homes and our infrastructure are falling apart. And it's time that the city took the responsibility.
The overall belief from the group is that the city adding sodium hydroxide into the water system is the causation for the sudden increase in pinhole leaks, leaving the city responsible to solve the problem.
You know, like, look at all these people here. This probably happened to everybody here. Like, something's got to be done. The sodium hydroxide problem that they invented into this system does not work.
The city has remained tight-lipped on the pinhole leak issue, saying that it cannot comment, with some councillors mentioning possible litigation down the road being the reason why.
On October 20th, members of the Niskantika First Nation began evacuating to Thunder Bay after an oily sheen was found in the community's water supply.
Workers at the Niskantika water treatment facility noticed an oily sheen atop the water coming from their reservoir. As a result, the water was completely shut off to the community, and their chief is now tweeting that he has to evacuate the elderly, infants, and the most vulnerable. A water service technician and environmental health officer from Matawa First Nations were on hand to sample the water. That sample will come back to a lab in Thunder Bay where they will try and determine the substance and cause. Muniz says the water won't be turned back on until the test results are returned.
Very dehumanizing to us, the way that what we're going through. Water is basic human right. How come we can't have it? Are we expected to live like this for another 25 years?
24 Niskantika members did not evacuate and stayed behind to look after the community. They met with Muniz to plan for the days ahead. Chief Chris Muniz says he will now return to Thunder Bay and continue fighting for his community. As for the residents who are in Thunder Bay, he says none of them will return to Niskantika until all their demands are met by government officials.
Water testing and necessary repairs at the treatment facility experienced delays throughout November and December. Evacuated residents had exclusive access to the Victoria Inn on Arthur Street and lived at the hotel for nearly 9 weeks when they were finally cleared to return home. After the break, the anticipated Braden Bushby trial finally gets underway. Stay with us. Welcome back to TBT News Year in Review. After 3 delays, the Braden Bushby trial finally got underway on November 2nd. Bushby is charged with manslaughter for the 2017 death of 34-year-old Barbara Kentner after she was struck with a trailer hitch thrown from a moving vehicle. The second-degree charge was reduced to manslaughter a few weeks prior.
Braden Bushby arrived at the courthouse hotel flanked by his lawyers for the start of his judge-only manslaughter trial. The day began with the Crown officially removing the second-degree murder charge and Bushby pleading guilty to aggravated assault, leaving the manslaughter charge the only matter left to decide. The Crown says the trial is about causation, as they must prove being struck with the trailer hitch was a contributing factor in Barbara Kentner's death nearly 6 months later. The court then watched Barbara Kentner's statement to police, which was recorded on April 2nd, 2017.
She testifies that she and her older sister Melissa were walking near the corner of Cameron and Mackenzie Street in the early morning hours. That's when Kettner says she felt something hard hit her and she went straight to the ground. She described that she couldn't breathe, fell to her knees, looked at the car, and saw someone with their head out the window say, "Yeah, I got one." Later that morning, Kettner went to the hospital and underwent surgery for a perforated bowel. She died in hospital that July. A post-mortem determined her death was caused by complications arising from the blunt force trauma to the abdomen, and liver failure was also a contributing factor.
Tuesday saw the Crown attorneys call Dr. Toby Rose as their second and final witness. She's the pathologist who performed the post-mortem on Barbara Kettner. She concluded that Kettner's immediate cause of death was a result of complications arising from the thrown trailer hitch injury, and a secondary cause was liver failure. Defense lawyer George Joseph argued that the liver failure was the main cause.
Joseph noted that Dr. Rose had peritonitis, which is inflammation of the inner abdominal wall, as one of the immediate causes of Kettner's death, and that it could have been already present in Kettner before the incident. Crown attorney Andrew Sadler began by stating it's impossible to avoid addressing the racism in the community in which this incident occurred. He then referenced witness testimony from inside the car that Bushby was laughing after he struck Kettner with the metal trailer hitch. In regards to her end-stage liver disease, Sadler spoke of the thin skull principle, in which the accused must take their victim as they find them. If the victim is more susceptible to death from injury, that does not eliminate the culpability of the accused.
Just 5 weeks after the leaky pipe rally outside City Hall, a Toronto law firm on behalf of the affected residents served the city of Thunder Bay with a $350 million class action lawsuit.
It just evolved in this lawsuit. It was never my intention to do this, but we were kind of pushed, to do it. It's the only way we're going to get answers.
November also brought the anticipated second wave of COVID-19 to Thunder Bay, as the district recorded just shy of 200 cases, almost double what it had seen since the pandemic began. Some of those cases caused outbreaks at various facilities.
A significant proportion of our cases are actually, that we've seen in November, are related to outbreaks. In fact, 86% of our cases that we've had since the beginning of November are related to 3 outbreaks.
Two of the outbreaks DeMille is referring to are in reference to the 24 cases from the Adult Teen Challenge Living Centers and at least 29 local pickleball players and their close contacts.
The pickleball outbreak eventually led to Thunder Bay's second COVID-19 related death, an elderly victim who was the parent of a pickleball player. And near the end of November, a substantial COVID-19 outbreak was declared at Southbridge Roseview Long-Term Care Home.
Messages of support, encouragement, and thanks now line the fences outside the Southbridge Roseview Long-Term Care Home, where COVID-19 has now infected more than 50 people and claimed 2 lives.
At the peak of the outbreak, there were more than 70 cases among residents and staff, and by December 18th, just 1 month after the outbreak was declared, 12 elderly residents had succumbed to the virus. And on December 14th, the much-anticipated verdict of the Braden Bushby manslaughter trial was announced.
It was all hugs outside the Courthouse Hotel for friends and family of Barbara Kettner after they heard Judge Helen Pierce give the guilty verdict to Braden Bushby for manslaughter in Kettner's death.
Judge Pierce stated that the Crown proved beyond a reasonable doubt that there was no intervening act that displaced Bushby's responsibility for Kettner's injury and ensuing death, and therefore Pierce agreed that through an unlawful act, Bushby accelerated and eventually caused Kettner's passing, and therefore she found Bushby guilty as charged.
It appears that the judge focused in on Dr. Rose's testimony about how it was possible and that there was no other option for the cause of death. There was a discordance that I thought that was in the evidence that the judge did not. The defense tried to seize on that discordance and was not successful, obviously.
Bushby will remain free on bail conditions until his sentencing hearing in February of 2021. 2020 was a tough year for us all, and as it comes to a close, it begs the question, what will 2021 bring? Be sure to tune in to TBT News Nightly News Hour to find out. Thanks for being with us to recap 2020. I'm Brittany Ramsay, wishing you a safe, healthy, and happy new year.